Hello. Yes, it's on. So, thank you everybody for joining. If you're not here, trust me, it's crowded. People are sitting on top of each other. No, I'm just kidding. But I'm still glad for the people that are here. Thank you for joining us, also on the stream. Tonight we're having our second meetup of the year, the summer edition. So just to go back and forth, we have 4 meetups this year here at the campus Eindhoven of IO. The first one was on March 24th. If you want to look it back, that's still possible, of course, because we have a stream on YouTube, which you can see where two of my colleagues were explaining remix, for example, which yeah was quite interesting. Today is, I think, also quite interesting. Today we also have two speakers for you, and but before I'm going to look at the program, I actually want to make sure that you know that if you want to be more part of this than only just a visitor or maybe a streamer at home or a stream watcher at home, you can also propose your own talks if you want to. Just scan the QR code and it will show up that you can mail us at meetup.eindhoven@iodigital.com. We're actually open for internal and external speakers. So if you have an interesting story to tell, don't be shy. Right. So today's program. We've opened, we've eaten our pizzas, and they were big. Wow. I didn't even finish mine. It was too much. But luckily, we're now at the part where we can think about how much we ate and fall asleep while Maarten is going to talk. No, sorry, Maarten. No, we're not going to fall asleep, of course not. Maarten is going to talk about the C in CSS, something with the C in CSS. I'm very interested to see what it's all about.
Ah, see.
Pun intended. Yeah. Of course, I know what the C stands for, but I'm not going to spoil everything. Afterwards, we'll have some time for a quick Q&A, so you can ask your questions, and those in the audience will be answered first. But if you are on the stream, you can also ask your questions in the chat, and we'll make time for you to ask the question to our expert Maarten, and then he might provide an answer. So after doing that, we have a small break. Hopefully it's 7:45 by then. Might be a little sooner, might be a little later, but we'll see. And after the break, Mark van der Linden, who is sitting in the audience here, is going to talk about the road towards less passwords. And I'm very interested in that one because I have way too many passwords, and I actually think that I'm reusing reused passwords already. So if I can for somehow may do with less passwords, that would be very nice. After Mark's presentation, it's the same. So we have we have some time for some Q&As, and afterwards, I'll show you what we'll do next. But let's start. So put your hands together for Maarten van Hoof and the C in CSS.
Hello. Hi, everybody. Hi, Dr. Nick. Nobody watches The Simpsons anymore these days. And I just had a compliment about how young I was looking. And then you break my dreams once again. That's my screen, but that's the wrong screen. That's a background. It's one of my beautiful background colors. And my display just decided, hey, I'm not mirroring that. Let's try this. Why are you doing this? So that people is how a browser works. All right. The C in CSS. I already spoiled it. No. Cascade layers. I'm going to talk to you about cascade layers. And for those who don't know, it's a very cool new thing in CSS. And cascade, it's a synonym for Don't Go Chasing Waterfalls. This is TLC with their hit single, Don't Go Chasing Waterfalls. People like me who are old know this stuff. Look, another old person. Thank you, Dan. But I'm not going to talk about TLC. Maybe I'll talk about this. Do you know where this is? Yes, it's Skull Rock between Adventureland and the other land in Disneyland Paris, where I went with my boys a few weeks ago. But I'm not. And from that skull, there's a nice waterfall that comes out of his mouth. But I'm not going to talk about that waterfall. I'm also not going to talk about this waterfall, but that's that's a waterfall from Unsplash. That waterfall from Unsplash, the first one if you search for waterfall. No. In English, a cascade is a small type of waterfall where the water goes from one level, plateaus a little bit, then maybe goes to another level, steady on. It's not this big kind of waterfall. And this almost symbolizes how CSS works. So CSS, or cascading style sheets. That's the C in CSS, cascade. What? No, really, yeah, it's that. But anyone here knows how the cascade works or what the cascade is? Well, two of you should know because you're from 3, 4, 5. Okay. The cascade is this definition. I'm not going to spell it out loud because we don't have that much time and I have too much slides. Long story short, it chooses the priority of different CSS properties. So the algorithm that knows how to give an element a certain color. But how does it work? Well, I'm going to tell you, folks. That's my face. That's the logo. That's also the logo. There's also that logo. There's also that logo of our great company that is called I/O. I'm a developer advocate and I do front end because if I was doing something else, I wouldn't be talking about CSS anyways. So before March 2022, this was the cascade. And see, it resembles, well, I have a laser here, so it resembles a cascade. And our browser, when it selects CSS properties for an element, it will go through this cascade. And if it doesn't find something in this dimension, it will check the next one, the next one, and the next one, and the next one. So let's go through each step. Yeah. Origin and importance. So when our browser gets a CSS property, a style, it will check the origin of that CSS property. And first it checks, does it come from the browser and is it important? If not, does it come from the user and is it important? Does it come from the author? Is it important? What's the author? It's the CSS that we make as developers. And then, for the unimportant styles, it flips the priorities. Does it come from the author? Does it come from the user? Does it come from the browser? What does this mean, these origins? Well, let's take the DevTools. And for instance, the first block that you see, that UL property comes from the user agent style sheet. That means it comes from the browser. It's unimportant, so that means it's at the bottom. So most likely, this display block will be overridden by something like this display flex that's set on a class that is being defined by by an author. And then, if we take a look at the lower two, these are injected style sheets that come from the user, and they have the important property. So that means it's in this layer, so that means that these margin lefts will override all these properties. So that's origin and importance. There are two special ones. Those are transition declarations and animation declarations. So if we have transitions, we don't want them to be overridden by any other CSS. So they're on top. They are the most important declarations you can have. And the animation declarations are between the important author and non-important author styles. Can you follow For those who don't know CSS, can you follow? Almost. Okay, shadow context. Any fans of web components? All right. Trick question. So, shadow context. As you all know, web components are a little bit tricky to style. But if you know how the cascade works, you can work around that, and you can easily style web components. So, the priority for shadow context, important shadow first, important host first. So we have shadow DOM is what we define within our web component that is encapsulated. I'm looking at you. You have to correct me if I'm wrong. It's encapsulated in the web component, and the host is the normal CSS we write in our DOM outside of the web component. And when it's not important, it will be flipped. So this example, we have a web component oddbird, and that in that web component oddbird that we give the span a color of Rebecca purple. But for the people who can't see CSS colors and know every single CSS color by heart, we can see that this is not Rebecca purple. No, this, so if I can find my mouse, is medium violet red. Oh yeah, of course. Yes, it's medium violet red. And that's because we are defining, as we can take, how does this work? God. So if we go back to our priority list, we can see that our medium violet red is declared in the host and not the shadow. So our span is declared within the shadow, but through the usage of the part pseudo class, something also new in CSS, we can target certain elements within our web components and style them outside of the web component with targeting them by their name and overriding their color. Does that make sense? Or no? Okay. Element attached. You all know this. It's putting a style attribute, giving it a style on the element. It's tailwind avant la lettre. It's how we all grew up writing CSS. And then the part with the difficult name, selector specificity. We all, as CSS developers, we all know this as well. So we have our IDs, we have our pseudo classes, we have our elements, we have our other pseudo selectors, we have classes, we have attributes, we have the where components, a special one, special case, and we have the asterisk. Select everything in your DOM and place the style on that. Now, I thought if we take each class ID and they have a certain weight, then, and we calculate them all together, we have the specificity score of that selector. Well, that's not true because specificity works in another way. Selector specificity works like this. It's a triad. So we have three numbers, three categories, as we could say: IDs, classes, and attributes, and elements. And the weight at the most left, for instance, if A is 1, will always override the weights on the other two on the right. So let's make this clear by giving you an example. I have to zoom in. So if we take this selector and we see we have a header element, we have an H1 element, we have a site title ID, and we have a logo, that gives us this specificity score, 1, 1, 2. If we then would take out the ID and maybe add another class, I would think that this would be a more specific selector. But no, it is a less specific selector because we took out the ID. The ID specificity is now 0. And if we just place another ID here, it will automatically, without taking away other selectors, have a higher specificity score than the other one with just classes. Kind of following? Okay, I see people nodding. We have a special one. That's the is pseudo class. So with is, we can combine stuff. So writing ul le is highlighted and dot active is the same as saying ul le dot highlighted ul le dot active. The is pseudo class combines. I'm sorry, I'm lost. The is, yeah, it's its own specificity score. So what I mean, it takes the highest specificity within brackets, the braces. No, the brackets. Let me show you. If I take an app here, it automatically will give. It will take away a specificity class and will add a specificity ID. So just to give you a sense, it will always take the highest specificity within itself. And the where, well, it has no specificity. We can see we have an ID here, but it's not calculated because where everything within a where pseudo class always has specificity score of 0. That's specificity. Bam. And then, if we still have two selectors, or I'm sorry, properties that have the same priority, then we're looking at the order of appearance. When are they evaluated by the CSSOM? So the last one always has a higher priority. For instance, this anchor tag will have the color of peach puff, not chocolate or not aqua, peach puff. I thought I had this on full screen. There we go. But then March 14th, something happened. And on March 14th, Apple released a new version of their Safari browser, and it had support for a new dimension in the cascade, and that's cascade layers. So there's something extra we have to think about as CSS developers. No. It's backwards compatible. No worries. Cascade layers, let's talk about that one. So here comes the live coding demo. If I can find my mouse. Oh no. Murphy's Law is getting to me today. So we have a table, and this table, I want to style this table, and I'm loading in a vendor file. So there we have three CSS files, and one of the first file that's coming in, it's a vendor file, and it has this awful long CSS, very specific selector that overrides my columns. Well, I'm not too happy with this color, and I want to replace the background with a Rebecca purple background. Well, if I take this, it will not override because our vendor style has a more specific selector. So I have to do stupid things like add an important, or use the same specificity selector, the selector with the same specificity. And then once a year, every Dutch person wants to have their website in an orange color. So I have to write again so much styling. And so I have to think about my selectors to override other styles. Well, introducing cascade layers. With cascade layers, this becomes far easier to work with. So what we can do is wrap our styling within layers. No, that's the wrong one. We have to do this. So we have our vendor styles, we have our site styles, we have our King's Day style. But let's forget that King's Day style. No, let's include that. But as we already can see here, when I included the site layer, we saw the color change. And if we look at, because it's in the vendor style, no, I was too early. My joke came too early. Womp, 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 womp. Where's my soundboard? But only with this selector, so here it is. So only with this column selector within that layer, it already overrides the entire background of all the table columns. That's because we're wrapping in cascade layers, and cascade layers are a higher dimension that come before selector specificity. So this way, we can encapsulate our styles and write far easier selectors. Yay, less code. And with CSS cascade layers, we can order our layers or define the order of our layers. For instance, now it's laid out like this in order of appearance, so vendor side Kingsday, but we could easily say, okay, the Kingsday styles, they have to come first. And then this will happen because the side style will override the background color of the Kingsday styles without not looking at that very big selector. I was wrong, it will override the vendor styles. The vendor styles will override, blah, blah, blah. But then you say, well, all good, but my I'm not into updating all my CSS just to include layers. Can I build further upon what I already have? Yes, you can do, because then we are, the styles that you already have are by definition called unlayered styles. And unlayered styles, they take precedence over CSS cascade layers. So if I uncomment these layer styles, then we have this beautiful flag triggered. So this is the priority list of cascade layers. So we have the important styles within from the first layer that have the highest priority, then important from the last, then important unlayered, then it flips again, unlayered, last styles have higher priority, and then the first have higher priority. What's the syntax? Easy, add layer, give it a layer name, nest your styles within, and we have the unlayered styles. We can order those blocks, so by first defining our layers up front, we can arrange the order of the styles. Who knows what style the anchor tag will have? Yeah, indeed, because links is here defined last. In this order, it will take higher priority over this one. Oh, it's a variable, yeah. Could be blue. Could be blue. It's Schrödinger's definition. But I could also start grouping my layers together. That's also a feature from CSS Cascade layers. I could create this framework called Tailstrap, which takes both all the negative things of Tailwind and Bootstrap and put them together, and then I can order my layers within that framework of other layers, and so on and so on. And I could style my album art component with a margin block end. I can also do dot notation to do sorting or defining layers. So in this way, we have the tailstrap, and the utilities, and indeed, same as before. Then within our layers, we also have unlayered styles that take precedence over other nested layers. Sadly, we can't intermix layer order. So if we take this one, we see first reset.type, default.type, reset.media, and default.media. This doesn't mean that it will be this order. No, the unlayered styles will take precedence. So your older regular styles, then the default group will take precedence, and then your reset group will take precedence. Bob, we're almost there. Hang in there. Well, I've been showing you all things within CSS, but what if I have old vendor files like the Bootstrap framework or the normalized CSS reset styles? Well, we can use the import rule and give that import rule a layer name. And the layer attribute in the HTML link element, where we define our style sheets and within our HTML, that's in development because that's another working group. And lastly, we can revert styles. We could say, okay, revert them, but then we go back to the original browser style, but with revert layer, for instance, if this anchor tag has the node theme, that will go back to the previous layer, and this color and the anchor tag will have the color maroon. There's much more to be said about cascade layers, and I'm not going to talk to you about it all. No, I'm going to refer you to Miriam Suzanne's complete guide to CSS cascade layers. It's on CSS Tricks, so by default, it's a site where you can get your CSS cheat sheets. Who has been using the FlagDog cheat sheet this week? Not this week? Oh, the grid cheat sheet then. Oh, okay. So, cascade layers. Why did I say after March 2022? I will not tell you now. I will first tell you why we want to use cascade layers. What are the use cases? Well, I see interesting use cases in loading style sheets in a random order. Gone are the days that we had to think about what file came first and then the other one and then the other. Like 2005, where we all had to load jQuery as the first JavaScript file and then all the rest because they had a $sign within. No. Everything. Oh, no. We can put them in layers and just load them in randomly and define our layer order up front. And then I see extra possibilities for maybe complex CSS architecture where we often see styles being overwritten by others. Developers get frustrated by CSS styles that get overwritten. With CSS cascade layers, we can, again, define that order and make a more useful CSS architecture. It's supported in all major browsers except in the Netherlands, because in the Netherlands, it seems that Samsung Internet is a major browser. I don't know why, but it's in the Big Four since March 2022, I'm sorry. So yeah, if you want to know more, check out Miriam Suzanne's blog, Bramus, who gave a talk about this at CSS Day. Check out the article at CSS Tricks, or just read the MDM web docs, or maybe the specification if you're into that. You can contact me at my website or at my Twitter. And I wish you all a very peaceful... It's the wrong button. Are there any questions? Yeah, oh, yeah, you need a microphone, right? What is your question?
My question is about, at the end you said you can layer those random loaded CSS files.
Yeah.
Is there a chance of flash of unordered CSS layers?
A flash of unordered CSS layers.
Because they come in at a different time, but you layer them correctly. But what if the less prioritized CSS layer loads first?
That's
Do
a good
you see
one.
that style first or not?
That's a good one. Yeah, normally if you... it's how you load in that CSS layer. So if you use the link attribute, it's blocking. So that's why we need critical CSS. But if you use all link tags and maybe preload tags, then it will all be loaded and evaluated before anything shows up on the screen. But if you use indeed asynchronous CSS fetching, then you have a chance for a flash of unstyled content on.
Fun.
Fun.
Okay, I got one other small one, I guess. The intermixed cascade order, because you cannot intermix them.
Yeah.
But you did show this will be the order. Is that the order of appearance that you
So
do them, or how you? Because you did name the layers. Yeah.
I'm sorry. So we take the cascade layer, the layer order of appearance, and the last one has. So it seems the last group has the highest importance. Within that group, we can also have unlayered styles, so they will also have higher priority than the media group. But it's indeed starting from last, going from last to first.
So default would be most important, not reset in the list.
No, yeah, indeed. So the default group will be the most important. Even if we set the default type here,
Should be the list like turn around then, no?
so it's most powerful, and then those will be selected first, and then
Okay. No, I got it. Thank you.
okay.
So this layer attribute you
Yeah.
have here, does it matter where you define that? Can you define it multiple times?
So you mean to order it?
Yeah. So would you normally place that at the beginning of your document so you know immediately which order your files should be?
Yeah, that's a good question. Your layer order has to be defined first. So you have to know something about your layering, define it first, and then the other layers can be well loaded in.
So a final one, if you have the worst framework for CSS, shouldn't it be called Bootwind instead?
It was indeed. It was an alternative naming of what I thought about, but Tailstrap was so snappy, so.
All right.
Did I use a name that has another connotation down? Okay, thankfully. All right, so any other questions? Yeah, sure.
Yeah, front-end developer,
Okay.
so it might be a little bit stupid. But I was
No.
wondering, is it possible to have some sort of like functions with like a JavaScript within your layers? So in certain events,
Mhm.
the order would change based on whatever happens on your website.
Ooh, so that you define the order through JavaScript?
Yes.
That could be possible if you manage to override that order. That would be possible. Then you're doing some inline JavaScripting with that dangerously setting it. Nah, that could be possible with. It could be possible. Yeah.
Okay.
Didn't think about it.
All right. That's it.
Yeah, we actually had one question from the stream, and actually Ralph took away that thunder because the stream was actually asking if tail
Strap.
yeah, if
Bootwind.
tail strap is the worst of both worlds, would Bootwind be the best? But you're not thinking about creating a good CSS framework now. Only the worst of both.
I don't think in frameworks. I think in CSS.
Perfect answer. Thank you. So I'll take more center stage now again. Thank you, Maarten, for this wonderful presentation about the C in CSS, and it was more than I was expecting. So thank you for that. Due to the fact that we don't have that many questions, we can either choose two things: more break time or start sooner for our next speaker, which is Mark van der Linden. Yeah, sure. We'll, okay, tell you what we do. If I look at my watch, it's 6 past, 8:30. I think I need a cascade layer there. This is not working out. Let's come back. Stream watchers, are you ready? Let's come back at 19:45. All right, so 50 minutes earlier than planned. If you want something to drink, by all means, the bar is off but open. But it's open. Okay, thank you.
Alrighty.
I said we were going to start at 7:45. Okay, sorry, 2 minutes late. Sorry. But let's get back to our seats so Mark can start to explain us, hopefully, a good way to stay safe while remembering less. Okay, well, good luck,
Yes, thank you.
Mark.
All right. Gonna start with a question. What's the purpose of a password? That's usually the case, yeah? Security. To protect our accounts. And with that, our data. And we trust the websites, the services, the companies with our key, the password, right? There we go. But I assume most of us have read an article or two over the past years with passwords getting leaked online. Thousands, millions. So my question is, what have we been doing to actually increase the security of that password? Exactly. So let's go back in time a bit and see what we have done. So back in the day, when the internet started to, become a thing, we only had a few accounts because there was not a lot. And we started off with a simple password. Name of our dog. Something simple, something to remember easily. And we as developers stored that password, sometimes in plain text. And then this malicious party comes and gets hold of the database. Meanwhile, we get a bit more accounts and we think, okay, let's just reuse that password because that's easy. Can keep remembering that. And we developers thought, okay, maybe let's just, encrypt that password before we actually store it in our database. But while they do that, the other database gets leaked online. And even though the password on this website is encrypted, you're still compromised because you're using the same password. All right, so we as users thought, okay, maybe let's use different passwords for different applications because that's a bit safer. But then, as Maarten, I think, already mentioned, we forget our passwords. So we have to, as developers, create all these annoying flows, reset passwords, emails, all that stuff. And the malicious party just keeps on going. Creates phishing websites, phishing emails. Another way to get hold of our passwords and compromise us again. And with that, we started to create policies, more regulations, two-factor authentication, stuff like that. And we as users were quite done with that. So we started using password managers. We don't even know anymore what our password is. And we just, let the tool deal with it. And we as developers have to spend a lot of time on all these annoying complex password policies, renewal processes, two-factor authentication, time we can actually spend on making cool new features. And with those complex password policies, we actually just give the variables for these malicious parties to specifically create brute force attacks. So my question is, why do we still use passwords? It's super frustrating for the users. We're creating a lot more policies that users have to adhere to. For us developers, we're spending so much time on these things to secure it. And apparently, the majority of breaches are because of those stolen and weak passwords. And you would say two-factor authentication is, something that could help protect it. But apparently, we're not using it a lot. Or maybe websites don't support it as much as we think they do. But I think the thing that bothers me the most is that we're sharing a secret. We're sharing that secret with the website or the service our password? How can we share something that is a secret? And it's not a secret anymore, right? So is there a way to protect our accounts without having to share that key? Let's find out. I'm Mark van der Linden. I'm a software architect and developer advocate at IO Eindhoven. And over the past few years here at IO Eindhoven, I've worked on many different projects where authentication and authorization has been a big part of those projects. And I've actually seen a lot of improvements. Authentication, where we actually use protocols like OAuth 2.0 and OpenID Connect. But also for the ease of use for users, like single sign-on products. But they all still rely on that password. So what can we do about it? Well, there are a few solutions. One is single sign-on. It doesn't really eliminate the password, but it does make it very easy for the user. They have one single password that they hopefully don't forget. Easy to use, like I said. And you would say that these companies like Google and Apple have some good security standards. But, of course, while using these services, it also has privacy implications. They know exactly on what website you are and when you log into them. And of course, we still have a password. And I would say it's even worse if this password gets stolen, if you use it for multiple sites. So it's not really a solution, but I think it's part of the solution. There are a few passwordless solutions that have been around here for a very long time. The magic link. Provide your email, you get sent an email in your mailbox, click on the link, and you're logged in without a password. Same goes with SMS one-time password. You provide your phone number, you get sent an SMS with a code in it, you provide it to the website, you're logged in. Again, no password. Or maybe the service has created a custom web application, a mobile application that you download to your phone, link your account, and you get a push notification when you try to log in. But are they really the solution I'm looking for? Because on one hand, we're asking more information, more privacy information of our users. A mobile phone number is something that you might not want to give as a user to that company. And I would say they're not always easy to use. Like a magic link can get into your spam folder, or it doesn't work because you got blacklisted. And I would say these things are not really standardized. I have seen a lot of different products, single sign-on products, and they usually don't have these out of the box. And especially if you need to create a whole custom app for it, it's a lot of work again for us developers. So I set up a few requirements for myself, what would be for me the perfect solution. It should be easy to use for the user, something familiar. For us developers, it should be a standardized specification so that we can easily implement it, because with standardization you get software development kits, and it's usually mainly adopted into products so that it's available out of the box, not even having to write a single code. And of course, for our malicious parties, we don't want any password. So I came across the FIDO Alliance, and their main goal is to reduce the over-reliance we have on passwords. It's a pretty good goal, I would say. And some of the members are Google, Microsoft, Apple, and Mozilla. And I'll get back to why that's important, but I think you might already know why. And they created, at first, the FIDO1 protocol, which allows you to authenticate with certain FIDO-compliant devices. Like this one, the YubiKey, might be familiar. You can put it into your computer, you tap on the little YubiKey logo, and you can log in without a password, unlike a Microsoft device. But they wanted to take it a step further, and they did that with the FIDO2 specification, which has two parts. The W3C web authentication, And that's where we see the 4 big companies, why it's important, as this specification is already ready available in the 4 major browsers we all use. And on the other hand, we have the client to authenticator protocol, which makes it possible to authenticate with a physical device, like the YubiKey I just showed you. So what is the web authentication specification? It's a specification that allows your browser to communicate with FIDO-compliant devices. And it's so important because every device nowadays has a browser. So your audience is insanely big. The other thing is that it's based on public-private key cryptography, which means that the device creates a private public key pair and sends over the public key to the server instead of your private key. And I can't overstate why that's so important, because with this, we're eliminating the fact that we're actually giving the key to these different companies. And what it also does is it supports both platform and roaming authenticators. Platform authenticators are things that are built into your device itself, like your smartphone or your laptop. And they use the biometrics of that device to authenticate you, so your fingerprint or facial recognition. And on the other hand, we have the roaming authenticators, as I already showed you, which is separate hardware, like YubiKeys, but could also be your smartphone. And they communicate via USB, Bluetooth, or NFC. If you want to know what your browser actually supports together with your platform, you could go to this website and it will show you which ones are supported. I'll show you all the links that I'm going to share at the end of the presentation as well. So, how does this work from a user's perspective? The user asks the server, of course, I want to register an account. And the server sends back a challenge. And this challenge is to prevent replay attacks. At that point, the browser invokes the Web Authentication API. And with that, prompts the authenticator window for the user to choose what kind of authenticator they want to use to register their account. So they can choose for their phone or their laptop. It does its ceremony by, for instance, scanning their fingerprint. And at that point, the private public key pair is generated. And with the private key, the challenge is signed. And together with the public key, that is sent over to the server. The server then validates that signature and stores the public key in their database. Now, the user wants to log in. The same thing happens at the beginning. The challenge is sent over to the browser. The browser again invokes the Web Authentication API. And the user is prompted with the authenticator again. They scan their fingerprint. The challenge is signed again, sent over to the server. The server now has your public key, so they can validate that signature with the public key. And you're logged in. So let's see how this works in practice. And I'm going to show you in Microsoft Edge, so that you actually believe me that it works in all major browsers. We can't make fun of Internet Explorer anymore. Well, we can, but you know. Yeah, true. Well, I have a Windows laptop. Yeah. So here I have Keycloak on running on one of my hobby projects. And the only thing I actually did is adjust some settings, and it was already out of the box available there. So sorry for the awful styling. I think Maarten can fix that with his CSS, maybe. So let's, give some data, and I say register. And at that point, I've not given a password, and now it shows me from the browser natively, hey, what kind of authenticator do you want to use? I can choose for the external security key or built-in sensors of this device. But unfortunately, I can't show Windows Hello, which is apparently also a thing, because that's not allowed on this laptop. So I'll choose for the Android phone. So the the authenticator to use my phone. It gives me a QR code, quickly scan it, and on my phone it will ask me to turn on Bluetooth, because that's the communication it wants to do with my laptop. I allow it to turn on Bluetooth. It's connecting to the device, and it asks me to verify my identity by providing my fingerprint, because that's the default for my phone to unlock. At that point, it even allows me to label the authenticator, and I'm registered and logged in. Let's log out, provide my username, and here you see that the browser also remembers my phone. I click on it, I get a push notification, I give my fingerprint again, and I'm logged in. Simple as that. On a mobile phone, you can do the same. So here a little video of me creating an account again. And here you'll see that I have different options because I'm directly on my phone. So here you see the different options by providing a security key, but here I choose for my fingerprint. Again, the option to label it. And I'm logged in. Unfortunately, you don't see everything because of security reasons with the screen recording, but I think you get the gist. All right, so if you want to try this out yourself, you can go to this link and you can actually simulate it on your phone. You can register with a name, you create your public-private key with the authenticator you choose, and you can then log in as well. So how does this work in code? So you can call the navigator.credentials.create method, which is available in all major browsers at the moment. And this method will eventually give you the public key that you can send over to the server. It has a few options that you have to provide. The challenge, as I mentioned before, is a challenge from the server. The relaying party, which is actually the domain that you're going to attach the public key to. And this is also important. As I mentioned phishing, with this, you're attaching the public key to a domain. So if I, for instance, would go to iodigital2.com, and it would be exactly the same, and I would try to log in, it won't show the key for me. So I'm not even able to provide my credentials. So no way of stealing it. Then we have the user, where the ID is something that is mandatory, and that is something that will be attached to your public key, and the server can use that to identify the public key to the user. Then we have the public key credential parameters, which is actually the algorithm that is going to be used to create the key pair. And this is, by the way, useful for if the server only accepts certain algorithms. And then you have the authenticator selection property, which you can specify certain authenticators. So if you, for instance, don't trust YubiKeys for some reason, you can leave them out. So that's an option you can give. And then, of course, the timeout. That's how long the user, or how long you want to give the user to perform this whole ceremony. Now, for the authentication, so for actually logging in the user, you can do the navigator credentials.get. And again, you can provide some options. Again, the challenge and the allow credentials, which is actually something useful for when the server actually returns back what authenticators have been registered for this account. And then you can easily prompt the user for the right authenticator and make it a step less in that instance. And again, of course, the timeout. So I think we've found our solution, right? Well, it's not perfect. I know, nothing is, right? So let's look at it from the perspective of the users. I think we could say you can't forget your password anymore because there is no password. You don't have to, adhere to all these complex password policies and no resetting of them anymore. And you can actually choose the authenticator you want. If you already have a YubiKey laying around, you can use it, but everyone also has a mobile device, so why don't you just use that? But it's something that can be misunderstood. We're so used to having a username and a password. And if you say to someone, hey, you can just, make it secure without a password, sounds weird. So I hope with this talk and, giving you this information about that it can be secure and actually is more secure, that we show people that it can be done without a password. Unfortunately, this is still a new concept, a new specification, and not all devices still support it. And of course, also not all browsers. We do have our major browsers, but there are others. From the perspective of developers, I would say that we're making it, way easier because we don't have to store passwords anymore with some encryption and on safe databases and all that stuff. No, we're just storing public keys. And we also don't have to make all these annoying password policies and reset password flows. And because it's a specification and standardized, you actually see, just like I've shown you in Keycloak, an open source single sign-on product, that these things have already been built in, and you don't have to code anything. So it gives us more time to work on cool new features. But as I mentioned, it's not the solution for all users yet. And that means that we can't just say tomorrow, let's just remove all passwords and give this solution. So for the time being, we'll have to, do both, because this method of authenticating can also be applied to a second factor authentication. Or you can even say, hey, if a user wants to eliminate their password, then you give them the option. And two things that I think still need a solution. One, you need to register per device for your account. So that means that if I register my account on my laptop and I go to my phone, I'll have to actually attach that device to my account as well. So you really need to think about a good process around that. And on the other hand, what if I lose my phone? I think we have the same issue with two-factor authentication. But yeah, here that's even more crucial because you don't even have a password to go back to. And Apple and Google are working on solutions for this, and it's called passkeys. And with that, they actually want to synchronize your private keys across your Google or Apple device. But if we start doing that, we're back at square one. So I don't think those are the best solutions. And I unfortunately also don't have the solution yet. But what I would say is make sure that it's easy to register multiple devices on an account so that if one of your devices gets lost or broken or whatever, you can still access your account. Okay, from the perspective of malicious parties, I would say, hey, they can still steal your credentials because they'll find a way. But if they do, they only have your username and public key. They can't do anything with that. Well, they can validate your challenge if they want, but they will never have the actual key to your account. So they can't steal anything. In fact, they actually need your actual device and probably even your biometrics. And as I've shown you, phishing attacks are just not possible with this anymore, as the key pair is attached to a domain. So I would say web authentication is a standardized protocol, and that makes it just so much easier for developers to implement, or even just use out of the box for ease of use. And as it's based on public key cryptography, it makes it impossible for these malicious parties to get hold of our credentials. And with that standardization, we have major support for all browsers and different identity providers to implement it very easily. And I would say, just start applying it to your applications if your identity provider supports it. Because you can just apply it as a two-factor. So why not just let people get used to it? And then hopefully people will start to understand that it can be safe without a password. We still do need to have a solution to dealing with lost devices and also with registering multiple devices. If you want to know more about web authentication itself, you can go to this link. It will show you all about, also on the server side, how you actually validate those challenges, how you can store those public keys properly, and also some example projects for you to get started on. These are the resources, and I thank you. Any questions?
Questions from the audience.
Of course.
Mr. Daan.
Yeah, thank you. Do you know if there's an easy way to rotate a private key on your own device? Is something like that built in or foreseen already in the protocol?
It's not part of the protocol, no. No. Yeah, it is, yeah.
Maybe a second question.
Mhm.
So you mentioned that the sort of the big four companies, right? Microsoft, Google, Apple, Mozilla, I think,
Mozilla, yeah.
are all already behind this. Do
Yeah.
you know if they are also starting to make this available? So make the passwordless logins themselves already available, because it would help a lot if they start sort of training the users to switch.
Yeah. Well, I know that Google already has it as a second factor. So yeah, they are, like I said, applying it so that people can get used to it. I don't know if Apple is doing it, because I have no Apple devices, so not sure if anyone has ever used it on an Apple device. Yeah, it's already out for a few years, so it could be, yeah. So yeah, they are trying to also promote it more, as Google has also had different talks about passwordless and of course about the passkeys that I mentioned. So they are actively trying to promote it and also making sure that people understand what this technology is. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you very much.
Do we have any more questions? Yes.
Ooh, 2 even.
I will go to this one first.
Yeah, we couldn't see what was on your phone when you registered.
Yeah.
Because I thought, oh, don't you need an app for that? But oh wait, that's in a browser. Is it just an URL that opens automatically and then the native pop-up shows in your face?
That's exactly it. Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah,
I answered my own
indeed.
question in my head, but I still had to validate. Thanks.
Okay.
Right, and the next one.
Yes, for the let's say lost account type of situation,
Mhm.
do you think it's maybe more like a vision question, but do you think that eventually there could be a place for like standardized European e-identity type ways of identifying yourself to maybe connect that to account, not for burner accounts like my 25th secret Twitter account, but
course,
maybe for
yeah.
my primary bank account and things
Yeah.
like that? That could be a way to reset things. Or?
It could be, yeah. You would, of course, need to have because with DigiD, we already have an app, of course. So with that, it's also, I think, already passwordless, in a sense. So yeah, I could see that, but I could also see a lot of people not wanting to link it to their actual personal government account. So I'm not sure, yeah.
All right. Any more questions?
Ooh.
Yes. All right.
So, or a I think user experience question. How would you suggest we go about creating awareness? Because as you stated,
Mm-hmm.
not asking for a password is weird.
It is, yeah.
It is very much so.
Mhm.
And it's another new thing that people have to learn.
Yeah.
did you have first question, how would you go about creating awareness? What's your personal take on this? And
Exactly this.
right, it was exactly this. All right. Thank you. And the second question I forgot. So thanks.
Okay.
Maybe you'll think about your question later on.
Yeah.
Off stream and yeah. Or maybe you can, when you know your question again, keep it in your mind until the 23rd of September, because then we're back here at IO Campus Eindhoven, but then for
Exactly.
our autumn meetup. So, Mark, thank you very much, by the way.
Yes.
Mark. Back on the 23rd of September for our autumn meetup. And hopefully we'll see you there again, and otherwise we have another one somewhere in the winter, but I forgot the date. Right, for those who were here tonight, thank you very much for coming and have a splendid night. Thank you.